Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. In case nobody told you today, fuck ICE. More than 40 people have died in dealing with ICE. The United States is now on the Human Rights Watch list for the first time. So there's that. But the sad thing is all the people that are killed by ICE, the news only seems to focus on the white ones, like the other people don't matter. They were people. They had families, friends, kids, parents, and they're gone. For why? I hear it before I see it. It's a helicopter. Then the sound comes in layers. Megaphones, boots, metal clinking. And somewhere behind all of that, the rot of official language. Tactical response. Contain the threat. Execute the warrants. Warrants. That's the word they use right before the city turns into a war zone. And then the sky starts shaking. A helicopter. It's not a news helicopter, and it's damn sure not a medical helicopter. It's a fucking Predator. The kind of machine that doesn't hover unless somebody already gave the order. And deep in my guts, I realize something most Americans don't ever have to realize. They're not coming to arrest people. They're coming to erase people. What's good, everybody? This is Time Machine Diaries, and I'm Cullen, your designated time travel witness for the parts of history they forget to teach in school because it makes the country look exactly like what it was. I'm going to say one of the most insane sentences I've ever said. In 1985, a U.S. city dropped a bomb on a residential neighborhood in fucking Philadelphia. And the craziest part, this isn't conspiracy, this isn't folklore, and this isn't internet exaggeration. This is a documented fact. And it happened in our parents' lifetime. I was a year old when it happened. So let's talk about MOVE. Let's talk about Osage Avenue. Let's talk about what the government does when black people refuse to perform acceptable suffering. Because the MOVE bombing wasn't just an attack on a group. It was a message. And the message was, if you won't behave, we'll burn the whole fucking block down. Before we go any further, I need to do something history never does. I need to tell you what MOVE actually was, and not the cartoon version. Because the official story always does this trick. They take a group of human beings with actual beliefs and actual grievances, and they reduce them into a single word. Extremists. Terrorists. Dangerous radicals. Militants. And once you turn people into labels, you can do anything to them. MOVE wasn't a gang. MOVE wasn't a random cult. And it wasn't a bunch of people who woke up one day and said, let's start problems. Nah. MOVE started in early 1970s Philadelphia, in a city where black communities had spent decades getting cooked alive by the same institutions that claimed to protect them. MOVE was founded by a man known as John Africa, born Vincent Leaphart. That name matters too, because the Africa wasn't a stage name. It was a rejection. It was them saying, we're not going to wear the last names of systems that fed off of our bodies. MOVE's worldview mixed black liberation politics, anti-police beliefs, communal living, a harsh critique of industrial capitalism, environmental and animal rights, and a total rejection of what they saw as an unnatural, violent, modern order. That last part is the key. MOVE wasn't trying to fit in. MOVE wasn't trying to be respectable. MOVE wasn't trying to get invited to a city council luncheon and smile for the fucking camera. They were trying to live outside the system. And America fucking hates that. Because in this country, you can be poor, you can be broken, and you can be dead inside. But how dare you not be obedient? And MOVE didn't just criticize the system. MOVE rejected it. And when oppressed people reject the system responds like an immune system. It treats you like a disease. And let's say this quiet part out loud. MOVE was treated like an enemy force because it was a black empowerment group that refused control. Not because they were the most violent group in America, not because they were the biggest threat to public safety. And I'm gonna prove it to you with the most obvious comparison possible. The KKK, better known as the Ku Klux Klan, has existed for over 150 fucking years. The KKK didn't just say offensive things. The KKK didn't just protest. They fucking lynched people, tortured people, burned homes, bombed churches, terrorized entire counties, worked hand in hand with respectable law enforcement for generations. I know you couldn't see it, but I was doing the air quotes on respectable. They murdered civil rights workers and carried out organized racial terror as literal political strategy. And in modern America, they're still fucking around. Not always in hoods. Sometimes they're in polos. Sometimes in patriot groups. Sometimes in heritage organizations. And hiding inside our institutions. But the ideology didn't die. It just changed fonts. So here's my question. Where are the helicopters? Where's the bombs? Where's the 500 officers surrounding their homes? Where are the blocks burned down around them? Where are the police firing 10,000 rounds into their neighborhoods? You don't see it. And you know why? Because white terror gets treated like a cultural problem, not a state emergency. White extremist violence becomes a few bad apples, isolated incidents, mentally disturbed lone wolves, economic anxiety, troubled youth. Aw, come on, he had a rough childhood. But black resistance? Black resistance gets treated like a national security threat. Black resistance becomes militants, terrorists, dangerous radicals, enemies of the state. And suddenly, things that should be unthinkable become tactical decisions. MOVE was inconvenient. MOVE spoke too loudly. And MOVE was a mirror. MOVE forced the city to look at itself. Its policing, its racism, its poverty, and the hypocrisy. And this is the unholy truth about power. Power can forgive a lot, as long as you don't expose it. And MOVE fucking exposed it. So the city didn't just want them controlled. The city wanted them erased. Not because MOVE had the power to overthrow the government. They definitely didn't. But because MOVE had the power to do something scarier. They had the power to make people question authority. Before we go any further, before we talk politics, tactics, reports, commissions, and excuses, I need to do what this country has never been good at doing. I need to say their names. Not as a headline, not as a footnote, not as members of a group, but as people. Because history loves to erase people by simplifying them. So we're not going to do that here. Today we remember the lives taken on Osage Avenue, May 13th, 1985. These were the dead. John Africa, born Vincent Leaphart, founder, teacher, a man who believed a system built on violence could only be answered with refusal. Frank Africa, born Frank James, a human being, not collateral, Not a target. A life. Conrad, Africa. Born James Conrad Hampton. Another name the smoke tried to steal. CP, Africa. Born Raymond Nathaniel Foster Jr. A full name, a full person, reduced to initials by the same world that didn't want to see him. Teresa, Africa. Born Teresa Marie Brooks. A woman whose name deserved birthdays, not body bags. Rhonda, Africa. Born Rhonda Cheryl Ward. A woman trapped between the state and the fire. And the state chose to erase her. And now the children. The ones this country tries to mention quietly. Because once you say it out loud, the lie breaks apart. These were the children killed in that house. Tree, Africa. Born Patricia Dotson. A child. A kid. She wasn't a threat to anyone. Netta, Africa. Born Zanetta Dotson. A child who should have lived long enough to become a memory maker. Not a memory. Delicia, Africa. Born Delicia Orr. A child whose future was stolen by grown men with uniforms and orders. And Little Phil, Africa. Born Phil Phillips. They called him Little Phil because he was little. And they killed him anyway. Tomasa, Africa. Born Tommaso Lovino. Known to the family as Boo. And I want you to hear that. Boo. That's a nickname from love, from family. That's the kind of name you only get when people hold you close. 11 dead, 6 adults, 5 children. And the neighborhood didn't just lose homes. It lost people who had laughter in them. It lost voices. The government erased futures. And the 2 that survived? And don't get it twisted, survival doesn't mean it was okay. Survival means you have to carry that pain with you for the rest of your life. Ramona, Africa. Known as Ramona Johnson. She lived, and she had to live with what she saw. And the only child survivor. Birdie, Africa. Born Michael Moses Ward. A kid who escaped a burning home and walked into a world that still tried to pretend it never happened. So when anybody calls this a tragedy, when anybody calls this a mistake, when anybody tries to tell you this wasn't deliberate, you tell them those names. Because that's what the bomb tried to do. It tried to turn human beings into a footnote. And we're not letting that fucking happen. Not here, not today, not ever. The most important thing you can take away from this is that they were people, they were children, they were family. They were individuals who died in a fire the city chose not to put out. Those names are the difference between memory and propaganda. Because propaganda loves nameless people. Injustice starts where names begin. And if you don't think this is about race, let's make it simple. There is no universe where they drop explosives on a white row house with kids inside, burn 61 homes, and call it a mistake. That only happens when the people inside are already seen as disposable. And Black America has spent centuries being treated like collateral. MOVE begins in the early 1970s, 1972 to be exact, founded by a man who became known as John Africa. MOVE was not a neat, sanitized civil rights group with good PR and approved slogans. MOVE was loud, confrontational, anti-police, anti-establishment, anti-modern industrial society. They believed modern systems were violently unnatural, The food, the policing, capitalism, pollution, all of it. And in the 1970s and early 1980s, MOVE and Philadelphia police were already locked in years of conflict, surveillance, confrontations, arrests, escalating hostility. So by the time we get to the 1980s, the city doesn't view MOVE as residents. The city views MOVE as a problem that must be handled like a war. MOVE settles into a row house at 6221 Osage Avenue, a working-class, largely black neighborhood in West Philadelphia. This is important because this wasn't some isolated compound out in the woods. This was a row house in a city block connected wall to wall with other people's homes. Kids lived there, families lived there, old folks lived there. People who got nothing to do with MOVE lived there. And when the city decides to solve MOVE with heavy force, they're deciding consciously that the neighborhood is acceptable collateral. May 13th starts with the classic American setup. Police have warrants. They claim danger, weapons, or an urgent threat. And then they do what police always do when they're afraid. They show up with enough manpower to invade a country. Nearly 500 officers are involved. Neighbors get evacuated. The streets get sealed. The mood turns from law enforcement to siege. And then it escalates. Tear gas is used. MOVE fires back. The police return fire. And this isn't a few shots. This is a full militarized shootout. More than 10,000 rounds were fired by police. Let's pause there. 10,000 rounds in a residential neighborhood. That's not policing. That is a war on American soil. And when you fire 10,000 rounds into a city block, you're not trying to safely arrest anyone. Eventually, the police commissioner, Gregor Sembor, authorizes something that still sounds fake when you say it out loud. They decide to use an explosive device. A helicopter hovers over the house, and police drop 2 explosive entry devices involving Tovex and components including C4 onto the roof of the MOVE home. The explosion ignites a fire, and the city has a choice. A choice that proves what this really was. They could contain the fire. They could try and treat it as a crisis. Instead, they let it burn. Firefighters are held back. The fire spreads. Row houses are connected. Fire doesn't give a shit about warrants. It eats everything. And by the end, 61 homes are destroyed. 250 people homeless. Not MOVE members. Families, neighbors, children. Inside that burning home were human beings. And when the smoke clears, 11 people are dead. 5 were children, and their ages ranged from 7 to 13. Only 2 survivors escape. 1 adult, 1 child. Imagine being that child. Imagine watching a city decide you're worth less than the inconvenience of letting a radical group exist. And then later watching America pretend this is just a tragic incident. No. This was a government decision. And it's one of the clearest cases of state violence in modern U.S. history. Not because it was unique, but because it was blatant. They didn't lynch them in the woods. They didn't disappear them quietly. They did it with uniforms, equipment, and official justification. And they did it in daylight. Afterwards, investigations occurred. Officials admit mistakes, bad judgment, poor planning. But this is America, so you already know what happens next. No criminal charges for leadership, no prison time, no justice. The city later faced lawsuits and legal accountability in civil court. But the core truth stands. A bomb was dropped, children were killed, and a neighborhood burned. And the people who authorized it went home and had dinner with their families. That's the part people have trouble processing, because America is trained to believe that only other countries do that. Only dictatorships, only third world nations, only enemies. But Osage Avenue says, nah, man, it can fucking happen here too. Move wasn't perfect. Move wasn't easy. Move didn't play nice with polite society. But here's what matters. You cannot justify bombing a neighborhood with children inside. You cannot justify letting fire spread across a block. This was about power being challenged. And when power gets challenged in America, especially by black resistance, the response, historically, is overwhelm, humiliate, destroy, then rewrite history to make it seem necessary. That's the cycle. And if you think I'm exaggerating, look at the language we still use. When it's black resistance, terrorists, thugs, criminals, animals, violent radicals. When it's white violence, lone wolf, troubled youth, mental health, bad day. Move didn't get the benefit of the doubt. Move got fucking bombed. And let me drag this into 2026 real quick, because this isn't just about 1985. This is about a system that still believes certain communities are disposable. We've watched militarized police roll tanks into neighborhoods. We've watched non-lethal rounds take out eyes. And we watched the government create an entire culture where it says if the state says you're dangerous, then anything done to you becomes reasonable. That is what Osage Avenue teaches. That the state gets to decide who counts as a citizen after the fact. And if you've never heard of Move before this episode, I want you to understand something. That ignorance isn't random. It's curated. Because if more Americans understood that a U.S. city once dropped a bomb on its own people, it would crack the mythology. So this is me cracking it for you. This is me saying, May 13th, 1985 wasn't an accident. It was a decision. And it happened once. It can happen again. Maybe not with helicopters and bombs. Because the first thing that burned on Osage wasn't the block. It was the illusion. And once you lose that illusion, you start seeing American history for what it really is. A country that keeps calling itself free, while repeatedly proving it will destroy you the moment you demand to be treated like you matter. This is the Time Machine Diaries. We remember what they want you to forget. And if you want more episodes like this, you already know where to find me. Now go look up Osage Avenue, I'm dead ass, and ask yourself, how the hell did they convince us this wasn't the biggest story in America? Because it should have been. It still should be. All right, y'all. Happy Black History Month. Stay safe. Fuck ICE. See you next time.